Welcome, welcome. Happy Friday. My name is Shannon Gilmore and I'm with Third Eye Nutrition. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about olive oil. Now, everyone knows that olive oil is sort of this superfood, and most people should be probably making it your main oil on a daily basis. There's been copious amounts of research showing that health benefits are through the roof, and there's a lot of different reasons why to be using olive oil on a daily basis. But the health benefits are only there if what you're consuming is actually olive oil. Unfortunately, in the last 10 years, we've had some very brave souls sort of blow the whistle on the olive oil industry. And what they found was quite a bit of fraudulent acts, pretty pervasive throughout many countries. And so I read one statistic that if you go into a grocery store, probably about 2/3 of the products that are labeled extra virgin olive oil aren't quite what they say it is. And only 2% of in the world of the olive oil actually qualifies as extra virgin olive oil. So this is obviously concerning. So today I'm going to go through a little bit how you can tell the difference, and I'll just give you a couple pointers. But I first kind of want to talk a little bit about sort of the concerning aspects, or sort of the egregious acts that are being that are associated with this sort of fraudulence. And the first one that the olive oil industry will do, or the company, is that they'll just slap on a label that says extra virgin olive oil when it's actually not. So they can command a higher price for it, obviously, and that's a problem just from the standpoint of integrity. The thing that I'm actually a little bit more worried about is that they will oftentimes dilute the olive oil with some other type of neutral tasting olive oil so that you can't really tell. Okay, so they'll use things like soybean, canola oil, peanut oil, even pomace oil, actually. And these are all sort of they can be sort of some polyunsaturated neutral oils that are sort of infused with it. The beautiful thing about olive oil is that it's a monounsaturated fat. And the thing about the monounsaturated fat is that it's molecularly very stable. And you want stable fats in your body. Why? Because every single cell in your entire body, every cell structure has to have fat. It has lipids, cholesterol, triglycerides. These are all forms of fat. And so you want those to be really, really high quality, stable fats. When you're mixing that monounsaturated with polyunsaturated fats, that's going to make it a little less shelf-stable and much more prone to oxidation, okay, which you definitely do not want in your body, ever. The more alarming, though, issue around the dilution issue is that certain people can have sensitivities to food, and they can actually have a full-out anaphylactic shock. So, for instance, if they're using peanut oil and you're definitely allergic to peanuts, that's a real problem, right? And it's probably actually how they started to blow the whistle on this industry, because people were probably reacting to the olive oil when they shouldn't be. But the thing that I'm more concerned about is that maybe you have a sensitivity to, let's say, soy, and you don't even know it, and you just never quite can figure out why you don't feel good, on a daily basis, especially if you're using it on a regular daily basis. That's an issue, because you're basically getting low-grade inflammation all the time, and here you are thinking you're putting this amazing antioxidant product in your body, and it's not necessarily that. Okay. The third thing that the industry has done is they basically just take rotting olives off the ground, and they've been sort of putrefying on the floor for 1 to 2 months, and they just scoop them up and throw them in and process them, and basically refine them at a really, really low temperature. So the problem with this is that you have the rancidity alone is going to have a very high free radical content, as well as high peroxides. These are things that you do not want in fat. This is oxidation. These are metabolites from oxidation. But also then on top of that, adding rancid oil to low temperature is also going to be increasing the free radicals even more. So basically, it could wind up being a pretty inflammatory product when you're thinking that you're consuming this amazing anti-inflammatory product, okay, which may not be the case. This can be incredibly, it's frustrating for me, and I imagine it's really frustrating for the consumer, because how do you know? How can you tell who's has integrity and who doesn't? And so what I've done is in this month's newsletter, I've sort of created a long list of sort of different brand names you can use, sort of certain stamps and that you can look for on the bottle, the smell of it, the taste of it, the way you store it. All this stuff I'm throwing in the newsletter this month. So come visit me at thirdeyenutrition.com, where you can sign up for that and get that dumped into your inbox once a month. And this month it's going to be about olive oil. But there's just a lot of nuances around it, and it's too lengthy of a conversation to have in a Facebook Live. But I will leave you with a few tips though on how to navigate this a little bit better. So the biggest offenders are all over the world, but they tend to be in Europe and obviously the United States. But in Europe particularly, Italy particularly got hit hard by it in terms of there was just a lot of scam. And so for now, until they're aware of it, they're cleaning it up apparently. I would say go towards countries like Chile and Australia, particularly Australia, who have pretty high standards around their olive oil industry. And believe it or not, California. California olives are not too far away from UC Davis, which is where they do a lot of research on the olive oil industry, at least in California. And so California, believe it or not, has some decent products coming out. This isn't to say that any of these countries don't have adulterated olive oil coming out of the country, but it's just to say that they seem to be a little better. The next thing you kind of want to look for, and this isn't the greatest recommendation only from the standpoint that apparently even like super tasters fail to identify adulterated olive oil. But I personally, my mother-in-law actually grows her own olives, and she sends me a batch every year, and I was absolutely shocked at the difference in taste from a pure, 100% pure olive oil product versus something I got in the grocery store. And so some of the elements you want to look for when you're tasting it is you want to be sort of fresh and aromatic, like fruity and peppery. And the key one that I didn't even know about till I tasted my mother-in-law's olive oil was bitter. There was like a bitter, like a zip to it. And that actually is an indication of like a high content of antioxidants. So if you want to use your tongue as a method, look for the bitter components, look for the brightness of it, okay? Because olive oils that have been diluted with other like a soybean or canola oil, it's going to be very neutral smelling and neutral tasting. It's going to be very homogeneous in the flavor notes, okay? It's going to be flat in this sort of way. And you can, once you taste like a really good 100% pure olive oil, you'll see what I'm talking about. There is actually a very distinct difference. And then the last thing I would say is the price and the size of the container. Like, you know, families of 6 are not going to be happy when I say this, but if you're going to Costco, and not to harp on Costco, but just like if you've got a Costco and you're getting this like massive bottle for like $10 to $15, chances are it's probably an adulterated product. And the reason why I say that is that olive oil is in essence olive juice. And if you ever go and get like a wheatgrass shot or fresh juice from some kind of high-end juicery place, it's really expensive to get just a really, really small product. And olives are really no different. It takes a tremendous amount of olives to make high quality olive oil. Okay, so if you're paying like that big jug should be about $60, $70. Okay, so that in itself is probably a red flag, at least in my mind, to go, it's probably been diluted with something, okay? Or it's rancid olives, because it's, you know, rancid olives are probably a heck of a lot cheaper than fresh, organic, 100%, you know, 100% organic olives. So just by the price, the container size alone, it's going to give you a clue that something's a little off, okay? But there's so much more to say about this. There's all these different nuances with this that I'm going to talk about in my newsletter. So come visit me at thirdeyenutrition.com, and hopefully, as always, it was helpful. And I will see you next Friday. Cheers.